Hi guys, it is a very hot day today, but I am working on this new project and my hair's all over the place, but I have prepared 20 rather lovely paintings. Letters, field letters. These are basically kind of like the pages from my journal, and I'm going to write them. I basically made 20 original watercolor paintings. Don't mind my nails. I do not get time to keep them fresh, because if I do, then I get glue and things on them. I'm using my hands all the time, so yeah, I can't wait to actually get finished with a project, because like maybe the state of my nails is telling you a little bit about how much movement is happening here, and these letters are meant to be dusty, sometimes wet and crinkly, holding the stories of the places which I am traveling through right now. So I'm gonna get down to writing the letters. I have written half of the letters onto my iPad, so I'm going to refer to that and then build on each page from there, inspired by the book A Secret Life of Trees. Let's get to it. these letters with pressed flowers and tiny rose painting and juniper from the garden, just plants from the garden.
Native vegetation to pasture, government incentives to destroy a food-producing landscape. By the early 2000s, more than 80% of the Brigalow belt had been cleared. Some studies put the figure higher. Entire communities of species that had co-evolved with this landscape over millions of years were pushed to the margins or beyond. And the official explanation: beef production, grain farming, economic development. But here's the thing that stops me every time. At the exact same moment that governments were paying people to destroy a system that produced food for free, they were also building infrastructure to supply food to the same regions through retail and agricultural chains that required money. That required work. That required participation in an economic system. You destroy the free food, you replace it with purchased food, and then you call it development. This raises a simple but critical question. Development for whom? And then there's the Murray-Darling Basin. I've saved this one for a specific reason, because it is perhaps the most thoroughly documented example of what I'm trying to describe, and because the transformation it underwent represents something that, the deeper I went, became harder and harder to look at without feeling that something important was being deliberately obscured. The Murray-Darling Basin is the largest river system in Australia. Its catchment covers over 1 million square kilometres, more than 14% of the entire continent. It is fed by the Great Dividing Range and drains eventually into the Southern Ocean through the Coorong. Not ignorance, not accident, not economic inefficiency, but the systematic replacement of a system that gave you macadamia for free with a system that charges you $40 a kilogram for macadamia that came back from across the Pacific. Why? The evidence suggests something much larger than simple land clearing. What I keep coming back to, what I find myself unable to explain away, is the question of dependency. A person who can walk into a forest and find food does not need to buy food. They do not need to sell their labour to afford food. They do not need to participate in a wage economy or a property system or a retail infrastructure. A free food forest is, in a very specific economic sense, a threat to the architecture of economic control. And what was built in the place of Australia's food forests? An agricultural system that required, and I want to be precise about this, that required land ownership, capital investment, seed purchasing, fertiliser application, water rights, market access, transport infrastructure, and ultimately retail participation. You need money to operate within the replacement system in a way you did not need money to operate within the original one, which they were, by design and by the devastation of their knowledge systems, at a profound disadvantage. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you're watching this and feeling the pull of this research, there's more depth in our community. Leave a comment, share what you think we're missing. The best discoveries in this space have come from people bringing pieces that others haven't found. The deeper I went into this, the more I found a particular kind of absence that I've started thinking of as structured silence. It's not that the information doesn't exist, bits of it are everywhere. In the journals of early naturalists, in the ethnobotanical surveys, in the oral histories of indigenous communities where they've survived and where people have been allowed to record them, in the scattered papers of ecologists who found in degraded landscapes the botanical signatures of what had once been there, but it exists in fragments, scattered across disciplines that don't often talk to each other, siloed into ethnobotany or agricultural history or environmental law or indigenous studies, rarely brought together into a coherent picture of what was lost and why. And when those fragments are brought together, the picture that emerges is genuinely startling. Australia, at the time of European contact, appears to have been one of the most sophisticated food production landscapes on Earth. not in the way that a wheat field is sophisticated, not through the annual destruction and replanting of a single species, but through the accumulation of ecological intelligence across thousands of generations. Through the deliberate arrangement of species in patterns that created food abundance across every season, that survived drought and flood because of their diversity, that required no external inputs because they had evolved in that specific place over millions of years. The Gondwana rainforests, 0.4% remaining, were not just old trees. They were a pharmaceutical library, an agricultural seed bank and a food forest of continental proportions. The big scrub, 1% remaining, was not just a picturesque landscape. It was a managed food garden that had been maintained and optimized for longer than the oldest continuously operating agricultural civilization in the world. The Murray-Darlings River red gum forests, degraded beyond recognition, their flood regimes destroyed, their fish populations collapsed, were not just riparian fringe. They were the connective tissue of the continent's most productive freshwater food system. And the Brigalow Belt, 80% cleared, the rest heavily degraded, was not scrubland. It was a complex and productive ecological system that had been supporting human communities for tens of thousands of years. All of it gone. Within one historical generation, replaced with a system of controlled food production that required money, management, ownership, and participation in a structure that somebody somewhere was operating at the top of. I want to close with a question that I genuinely don't have an answer to. Not a rhetorical question. A real one. What did they know? Not the settlers with their axes, not the timber companies with their teams, not even the colonial administrators with their legal instruments and their land grants and their improvement clauses. What did whoever designed those systems know about what was being erased? Because here's the thing about the knowledge that lived in these forests. The knowledge of when to burn, where to plant, which species to move and which to leave, how to read the seasonal signals, how to tend a landscape across decades and centuries and millennia. That knowledge didn't live in books, it didn't live in archives, it lived in people, in communities, in ceremony, in the accumulated practice of generations. And when the people were dispossessed, when the communities were broken apart, when the ceremonies were outlawed, as they were, formally and explicitly, in Australian colonial and later federal policy, that knowledge didn't transfer to archives. It disappeared. You can't look it up. You can't recover it from a library. So old, they predate.
It's a hot day, and we are going to try and do some of this.
Current estimates suggest that at the time of
Little Terra on my back.
these ancient Gondwana lineage rainforests may have covered
Try.
the majority of the continent in various forms.
I've run out of, okay, so I prepared 20 of these already yesterday. I still have to write the letters, or I'm thinking maybe I don't know, I haven't decided what to do with these yet. These I prepared for the next batch, and it feels like I'm working on a moving express train. Sorry, battery died. So this was the first batch. And I don't know how this looks with the tape sort of overlapping part of this. I'll have to just figure out how to
use simple prompts to manage your server with an MCP-powered AI assistant. Get more, pay less. Go to hostinger.com/PK.
either I can add little bits of like
And then, in the 1960s and 1970s, the Queensland
fabric,
government began offering explicit
just little
financial
tiny
incentives
strips
for
of like fabric.
subsidized clearing,
example.
tax concessions. Some studies put
This.
the figure higher. Entire communities of species that had co-evolved with this landscape over millions of years
And
were pushed to the
maybe,
margins
I haven't
beyond.
decided yet, but
And
I'm
the
going to
official
produce
explanation, meat production, grain farming, economic development. But here's the thing that stops me
These
every time.
20 batches of these for the next 2 whole weeks, complete 2 weeks. So I've already been doing this for 2 days, and this is the 3rd day.
That required participation in an economic system. You destroy the free food, you replace it with purchased food,
So
and then you call it development.
could be. I don't have to add the same one to all the pages.
Development for
Field Parcel II of Turtle Tales. The landscape around us. The more I think about forests, the less I find myself asking questions about trees. Instead, I find myself asking questions about people. How did we arrive in a world where hunger exists alongside abundance? How did landscapes that once fed communities become places we simply pass through? And what stories have quietly disappeared beneath our feet? The two books in this field parcel don't offer simple answers. Instead, they encourage us to look more carefully at the world we have inherited. Hunger reminds us that food is never just about nourishment. It is also about memory, inequality, dignity, and belonging. The world since 1945 steps back to look at the forces that have shaped our modern world. Its politics, economics, and changing landscapes. Together, they ask us to notice something that is easy to overlook. A woodland is not simply a collection of trees. A river is not simply water. A landscape is not simply scenery. Each one carries the memory of people who lived there before us, or the wildlife that lived before us. As I've been preparing Turtle for her next expedition, I realized that I'm becoming less interested in planting trees for the sake of planting trees. Planting a tree takes an afternoon. Woodland stewardship is something much older. It is a culture. It is a relationship passed from one generation to the next. It is knowing which fruits ripen first, which herbs return after winter, where the bees forage, and how a forest can quietly feed a community for centuries. That is the journey Turtle is beginning to follow, not simply to document forests, but to search for the history of food forests, to understand how people once lived with landscapes rather than simply beside them. Perhaps the future of conservation is not only about restoring habitats. Perhaps it is also about remembering relationships. Thank you for walking alongside Turtle as these questions slowly unfold. I hope we can continue exploring them together. So here are the letters that I will show you, like 3 batches that I made in the last three and a half days. I started 4 days ago, but my daughter was with me. Normally she is going for spending her day with her grandma, and then I have time, but otherwise I have no time. So also, by the way, I painted my nails. I never get time to paint my nails, okay? Painting my nails actually means that I had 2 seconds on me, but I'm pretty sure that this is gonna mess up very soon because I also never have time to sit with the drying session. But anyhow, it just helps me, you know, kind of like this. I wake up in the morning, make myself my 3rd cup of tea if we have electricity, and that's a luxury. I say this in every vlog, but I tend to, I think, cut that out of, edit it out of the vlog because I don't know why I do that. But yeah, I mean, I have been living through a space where we don't have electricity. But anyhow, so for me, for somebody who likes to drink tea, it's really nice to have electricity, because I like to drink my English tea with the kettle, boiled water, not the doodh batti, which is something that is a much slower process that is common in Pakistan, I believe in India as well. But if I was living alone with a proper kitchen, which we don't have here, then I probably would be making doodh batti. So, this is what I came up with for my first batch. And I made like tiny rough roses. I just the first batch was basically, I was thinking, like I was trying to figure out how to make letters with what I have, and make them really quickly. Like, how quickly could I make 20 batches every day for the next 2 weeks, for 2 weeks in total, because I'm trying to raise funds for my Ecology studio, and I will put the link in the description so you can order your letters, field letters, from my Instagram. And that's basically all I'm using right now. I might actually put these on my Patreon shop as well. But because I don't get time, each of these are unique, because obviously I took this lovely pieces of vintage paper from a 19th century book. Maybe I will also show you in one of the sessions what the book is, because it's interesting. I mean, it's a piece of culture from the 19th century in all these letters. This is a batch of 20, and I put this one right on top because I foraged 20 juniper from the garden here, and clover, and it's really beautiful clover. The very day I foraged the clover, the landlord came with all his kids and took all the clover off. So they do that at least 3 times. They've done it 3 times this year already. So they apparently take it for fodder, but I don't get it. Like, I don't think they're taking it for fodder for their animals, because I can see that every time they take the clover off, they actually stack them up on bundles on the corner of the walls, and all the clover dries up completely. So I don't know what they're trying to feed the animals. I wanted to tell them that they can bring their animals onto the gardens if they really need to feed their animals, and that would have been, but it's a really tiny garden, so I don't get like how the locals that live in Hunza don't even pay taxes. They have so much land, and they talk about, like, you know, having community solidarity, but how come they're so like split on the idea of sharing common land for their animal grazing? And yeah, I mean, there should be a system around it. I guess maybe some people just don't think about it, but yeah, maybe like some people I know have bigger pastures for their animals, so they have a system, and maybe there's been some kind of a split between the families, or like inside the community, as of maybe the last 10 years. So we're documenting ethnobotany. We're documenting like old techniques, like, are these people coming here since whenever they arrived on this land with ancient techniques, or old techniques of working with this land, and if they are, then what are those techniques and what are those methods. So those are the kind of information, that's the kind of information I like to write in my journal. So these, you can consider these as pages from my journal. So first I have just basically added like a wash, a wet on wet watercolor wash, and I've written a unique letter on each letter. So absolutely every letter is unique because you don't get the same brush on every page, and you don't get the same painting or the letter, or any piece of the newsprint paper from the old book is also not the same. But it's interesting, I really had to read every piece of words, the words on every piece that I was pasting on here. But some of the words were actually like telling me that, I haven't read the book, but it was telling me that this would have been an angry woman writing very passionately a story that was probably inspired by like a very passionate relationship situation. So yeah, it's a love story and it's a really passionate story, and I think that it's relevant for right now because like there needs to be a little bit of like fire to get my engine going. So all these letters that I'm producing are to get the engine going, and it's interesting to have like pieces of history in my little artifacts in my letters. So that's what I'm sharing with you all. And also every letter that I've written here is inspired by the story that I'm writing about food forest, the history of food forest, because I think that that is most relevant to my expedition. Why I'm doing this whole campaign is to raise the funds to study the ecological corridor, to see what the potential is and where forestry can happen and where it should happen, so that before I set out to plant trees, because a lot of people here told me, well, a few people told me that I should start a GoFundMe, and I was like, I'm not doing a charity, but I do want to plant trees. And they're like, people don't know about your work, so so I had to like rethink about how much I understood the people here, and how I need to communicate my work so that I can see if they would be interested in not just planting trees, but also like first creating a system around it, doing it systematically, so that there can be proper funding, and you don't just plant trees, because planting trees is a day, but growing a forest is nurturing, is stewardship, and that can take 10 years up to 100 years. We want to pass on these forests to the next generations. So it's quite a long-term vision, and yeah, so I'm passionately making these letters. So these are the first 20, and they feel nice. I think I'm probably gonna make the first batch of 20 by 14 batches before I come back to them and see if I want to add any details. So here's the next one, and I haven't added any pressed flowers and I haven't written any letter on it yet, but this was the second one. So these are butterflies. I believe I may have, yeah, so I decided that I will have to come up with a different method to paste the pressed leaves on, and maybe I'm going to take a different colored paper, which I have right now because I have to work with what I have, and use the same technique of tape because I don't have a lot of laminate. I do have a little bit, but it's not going to be enough. So I'm going to take a little bit of that and make it into a tiny sort of a frame. And the only thing is that I have to go foraging, and it did rain for the last 3 days, like heavily, which was a huge blessing, because when it has been hot, it has been scorching hot. So I couldn't get out. But the smallest, tiniest plant I could find was the clover and juniper, and it seems to be like the perfect kind of plant to press. So before pressing, I simply decided to tape it on, which is what I do for my studies. So you can, if you were a botanist and you wanted to make a painting or a study of the plants that I've added here, you can easily see the shape, the structure of the leaves, and the size. And I have not added the root, but it's just basically the stem, leaf, and flower. So then we have the, oh, it was right here. It was right under. So this is a little mushroom, and same idea here. So basically these are, each painting is turned out slightly differently, but I took anyhow, I will be doing this for another whole 2 weeks, so sorry to cut the video short, but let's get straight to the food forest. The story that I'm trying to document with my expeditions is about food forest history. And in Hunza, I have a mulberry tree in my garden, and I wanted to share this with you. So this is what a young mulberry tree looks like when it's about 50 to 70 years old, but what an older, maybe 100-year-old mulberry tree looks like. Compared to the apple tree, the mulberry can maybe grow to be a lot older. So it's just a little sketch from AI. What you can journal in your ethnobotanical journal, if you wanted to keep one, you can join the Forest Gatekeepers, because we'll be making ethnobotanical journals together on this journey. So let's say if I was to get 55 supporters on Forest Gatekeepers, or even 1,000, 2,000 subscribers to my Luna letters, or if you buy the field parcels or the field letters, then you are directly supporting the ecological moving studio, which is Turtle. It's a Land Rover. If you'd like me to continue writing these stories and mapping the forest, and really investing in the future of our generation to be a healthy land, a safe land, a place where we can craft from natural materials that are free or all around us, then help me grow the stories of turtle tales. I would really appreciate you stay with me, and like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Bye.